right. Well, good afternoon. Again, it's so wonderful to see so many people here today. Welcome to this training titled Applying a Survivor-Centered Trauma-Informed Approach to Working with Families Experiencing Intimate Partner Violence. My name is Steph Garcia, and I am here on behalf of Policy Lab, which is a research center at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and presenting on behalf of our collaborative titled the IPV Home Visiting Collaborative. So I'm going to just give a quick background of who the folks are that you will be hearing from today, and then kick it to our presenters to lead us through. And thank you. So the IPV Home Visiting Collaborative is a Philadelphia-based initiative working to ensure that families impacted by IPV receive trauma-informed and survivor-focused care. We bring together cross-sector, multidisciplinary expertise in early childhood home visiting and IPV services. And this includes 3 local home visiting programs. We have representation from Maternity Care Coalition, Parent Child Plus, and the National Nurse-Led Care Consortium. From DV services, this includes both survivor-focused services from Lutheran Settlement House and support for the partner who has acted harmfully, and that's Cordea. We also have local government representation from the Office of Domestic Violence Strategies. Kalina, who is our lived experience expert, who has been instrumental in this work. And then my colleagues at CHOP Policy Lab, Katie Kellum is here on the line, and then Dia Nag and Meredith Matone are also from Policy Lab as coordination and evaluation support. And we also wanted to just thank our funder, Vanguard Strong Start for Kids. So through this partnered work, we are aiming to build the capacity of organizations and systems that support families who are impacted by IPV. And a key part of what we do is to promote shared skills, knowledge, and resources so that family support professionals have the tools that they need to feel empowered in their decision-making. Which brings me, I think next slide, brings me to the folks who are co-leading this event today. So in addition to Lutheran Settlement House, our presenters are based in Philadelphia home visiting programs in roles titled IPV or DV specialists. This model was designed by our team as a way to build the capacity of frontline professionals in home visiting programs when they encounter IPV. And that kind of resulted in the creation of the specialist role. So what does this look like? IPV specialists first complete an intensive training adapted from the kind of official DV advocate training with some special content in early childhood and pregnancy. Following that training, they become part of a cohort of other specialists who meet throughout the year for continued learning, contributing to training and education efforts like this one, and providing agency-level support as needed, such as one-on-one case consultation or sharing resources at their staff meetings. If this sounds like something you would be interested in, please look out for our post-training survey. You will be able to indicate if this program feels like it could benefit your organization and who we should contact to discuss more. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott from Lutheran Settlement House to start the training.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here, that you're spending some of your rainy Tuesday in this virtual space together, where we're going to spend about an hour and a half getting skilled up and learning about how we can show up for survivors of intimate partner violence in this work. Before, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, but before I do, I just want to take a moment to arrive and welcome you all. Thank you for coming. It was really exciting to see that so many people were interested in a training like this. It really shows how urgent this topic is. I want to take a moment to just welcome all the feelings that you're bringing with you into this training. Any tiredness, Any excitement, any skepticism, curiosity, your questioning, I want to welcome in. Um, I want to welcome in to this space also any survivors of violence. We know sadly that intimate partner violence and family violence are so common, and survivors are in every single room, and that includes this room. And I'm really grateful to you for showing up for other survivors in this way, but also I hope that you will make sure to take good care of yourself during this training. And even beyond that, I want to welcome into this space truly the thousands and thousands of survivors who are not in this room, but who need for you to be in this room and who are going to benefit from your participation in this training, from the skills that you're going to be able to take with you today. So welcome to everybody who's here virtually and in spirit. My name is Scott Sprunger. I've been doing direct service work and community education with Lutheran Settlement House for 3 years now. Um, and I'm joined by Zach Mackey, who's my supervisor. He wasn't sure if he'd be here today, but do you want to just hop off mute, Zach, and say hi?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Scott. My name is Zach Mackey. I am the manager of community engagement here at Lutheran Settlement House. Thank you, everyone, for joining this training today. Yeah, I've been with Lutheran Settlement House 4 years this August. Um, yeah. Hey, Cora.
And just want to say a quick word about housekeeping, in that it's so fabulous that so many people have joined this webinar. Right now we're sitting at 134 participants. So I encourage you to make good use of the chat, and there's going to be times when I'm going to invite you to share some things in the chat. And just because of the number of people here, I'm not going to necessarily be able to see every question that you ask. You may remember when you registered for this training that there was an option to share some questions that you might have. So please know that we um, shaped this training around some of the questions that y'all already offered. But please know that this training will be starting the conversation, and there will be a lot more to learn. So moving along, I want to get us started together by checking in with one another. I'm going to ask you to either scan this QR code with your device or to um, follow the link that I just dropped in the chat. Actually, that might have been the wrong link. Hold on, bear with me. Sorry about that. Correct link incoming. So scan this QR code. You could type in menti.com in your browser, or you can follow the link that I just dropped in the chat. And I'm going to ask you how you're feeling today. So take a moment, add yourself. I'm seeing quite a few people are feeling like Janine today. Maybe a little bit over it. Some folks are feeling like Saquon, maybe celebrating something. Some are feeling a little more tender, like gritty. This is great. Take another couple seconds, just check in from how you're feeling today. It's great to see how y'all are arriving. Thank you. Oh, and Susanna, happy birthday. That's great. All right. Want to share, just go over again some of the learning goals that we're going to be working on today. The first is getting real clear about what it looks like to work with survivors and their families in a way that is survivor-centered and trauma-informed. We'll also get into some communication strategies that can really help you, especially if you're feeling stuck, to open up deeper conversations with survivors and maybe help them access um, the values and the agency that they want to operate from. And finally, we're going to be landing this plane with a panel where we'll talk about the ways that you can support your own being and your emotions in the context of working with families where violence is an issue, because we know that this is something that can be very impactful on advocates and workers, and that it's really important that you have strategies for addressing some of those impacts. First of all, survivor-centered and trauma-informed advocacy. What does that mean? Um, you'll hear me use these terms kind of interchangeably because they're both kind of aiming at the same strategy, which is interacting with survivors in such a way that they are really given choice and autonomy. Their agency and their ability to make decisions for themselves is something that is promoted and supported, rather than maybe coming in there and just telling the survivor what you think that they should want. So the goal here is really empowerment and agency. So many people, when they are living with violence for so long, they feel their own inner sense of agency or self-worth or empowerment kind of slipping away. And that includes ability to make plans for the future and to make meaningful choices for the safety of your family. That's why when working with survivors, it's important to do so in a way that really supports that ability to make decisions. And that includes recognizing the impact of trauma on survivors of violence. We know that facing violence is traumatic, and that can have long-lasting effects on the survivor for long after the violent incident. And so supporting survivors in a trauma-informed, survivor-centered way really looks like starting where that particular survivor is and going from there. And so every step of the way, putting them in the driver's seat and making sure that they have meaningful choices and say over the direction of their life. Now, it might be helpful to better understand what survivor-centered and trauma-informed advocacy looks like if we maybe contrast it with some advocacy that is not quite so survivor-centered. And so I'm going to share with you some of the mistakes that we've made in this field of domestic violence intervention and prevention in decades past. Some of that traditional approach is when we got started, a lot of the time, we assumed that every victim was a woman and that every single partner who is acting abusively is male. That is a very common form of relationship and a very common kind of relationship to see intimate partner violence, but it's far from the only one. And in fact, survivors come from all genders, all races, all sexual orientations, all cultures, um, even all levels of access to wealth. Another thing that we would assume is that every survivor wants to exit the relationship. This was early on. We thought we knew what survivors needed, and that was to get away. And we thought that if they didn't agree with that it's our role to convince them. So that was another thing that we did that wasn't quite so survivor-centered in the beginning of this work. That we really had this idea that we knew better than the survivor, who's living in the situation, what they should want to do next. And another area where we kind of failed to be survivor-centered or trauma-informed is just assuming that every survivor wants to take legal action or sanctions against the person who's been hurting them. Some do, for sure, and others want other kinds of resources. If I were to sum all of these mistakes up, it would be something like this. In the traditional approach, we thought that all survivors were pretty similar, and we thought that all survivors would want the same things. When both of those are wrong. Survivors come in so many different shapes and sizes and life experiences, and survivors want so many different kinds of things, have different goals that are individual to who they are. And by trying to maybe convince them or coerce them, pressure them to choose certain options instead of others, we actually were kind of replicating the same power dynamic that took away their power in the first place in their intimate relationship. Another way of expressing this is that in the traditional approach, we really put a premium on safety and kind of set everything else aside in the meantime. So the goal in some of this early work was to get a survivor and any children out of the house as soon as possible, to create like a legal barrier separating them from the person who's choosing harm, um, to really focus on getting into shelter or a new place to land first as the very first step. And then later on, when it comes to self-worth and agency and self-determination, we figured this is something that could be worked on later as a second step once safety has been achieved. But we've actually found since then that that's the exact opposite of how this works. That by supporting survivors' ability to make meaningful choices for their own lives, at every step of the way, whether they want to leave or not, we actually can support them to be safer at every step, not just when they're trying to get away. So again, this is the traditional view is one that tries to treat every survivor as if they're the same and they want the same things. When really the kind of survivor-centered perspective that we try to take in this work nowadays is one where we want to support survivors to be able to make decisions for themselves. And that's even when they make decisions that we might not feel good about or might feel worried about, because it's still ultimately important that survivors are trusted to make decisions about their lives. Another way maybe of expressing this is by thinking of two different kinds of power. The first one is power over. And this might look like violence or threatening to use violence. It might look like many of the tactics that we associate with intimate partner violence, such as sexual coercion, manipulation, gaslighting, financial control. But it can also look like it can also take forms outside of abusive intimate partner relationships. We certainly see power over in society when one group is afforded a lot of benefits at the expense of another group. And we see power over even in the helping professions when professionals like ourselves decide that we would rather make decisions on behalf of our client rather than work with them collaboratively. Another example might be helping a survivor in a way that's rooted in saviorism, or wanting to be a rescuer, essentially, rather than somebody who is a partner, who is working collaboratively, and who is standing in solidarity with the person who's being hurt. Contrast that with what we call power with. So this is the power that grows by being shared amongst people. Things like making decisions together and sharing in responsibility for making decisions. listening closely to just understand without a motive. An example of this might be mutual aid or social movements. But if you think about it in your professional work, it could look like taking on a collaborative stance when it comes to developing safety plans, or um, also noticing and affirming the strengths that you see in the client and just really reflecting them back to them. Acknowledging that there's no single one way to survive or to recover from violence. So we have these two kinds of models that we're going to contrast. One is using power over, and this might feel very familiar to the survivor that you're working with, because it's probably the dynamic that they've lived under um, for uh, uh, who knows how long, and they might need a little bit um, of support, maybe, to access other forms of power, like power with. So one way that we like to express this at Lutheran Settlement House, and this is a phrase that we go back to every single time that we're having like a difficult client scenario, or something is really stumping us about how to proceed next with a particular case. We always repeat this to one another to really center ourselves in the values of survivor-centered care, and that's the survivor drives the bus. So in this metaphor, the survivor is the one who's ultimately driving the decisions. And the road that they're taking is what we might consider the healing journey. It's one where they're taking steps, small steps, big steps, toward creating some safety for themselves and for like building a sense of maybe some healing and some recovery from the violence that they experienced. Now, you as an advocate or a professional might get invited to join them on the bus. And what I really want to emphasize is that is actually a really great honor. That shows a lot of trust. It shows that you've done something that really made this person want to share what they are most concerned about and what they most need help with. And they've invited you to join them on the bus. And actually, because of your professional capacity, you might have access to some information that the survivor doesn't have. So that could be access to resources and referrals. It could be information about how to navigate systems that are difficult to navigate. And that's your little roadmap that you can bring with you on the bus to assist the survivor with the healing journey. But the important thing in this metaphor is that the survivor is ultimately the one who is driving the bus. And if say you're riding on the SEPTA bus, and the driver takes a turn that you don't agree with is the right direction, would you reach over and grab the steering wheel and try to correct course? Maybe, but probably that's going to be not the safest for yourself or the driver or anybody in the bus. And it's worth considering that at any point the survivor can ask us politely to exit the bus, and that's okay too. That's another way that they can practice their agency. Our role is not to drive the bus. Our role is to be there, to bring our expertise, but ultimately to support the survivor in driving. So what can be so difficult about promoting agency and self-determination when working with survivors is when they want to do things that might feel to us like not what we would choose in that scenario, or not what we would recommend. And sometimes when that happens, it can bring up feelings of discomfort, of intense worry. and maybe even a desire to try to save somebody from making a decision that we disagree with. Which is why we're gonna hop into our first activity here, which is one where we're going to identify kind of which zone we're in after a series of scenarios. So I'm going to show some scenarios shortly here. And for each scenario, similar to how in the check-in when you put a dot over how you were feeling, I'm going to ask you in Mentimeter shortly here to put a dot over whether you're in the comfort zone, the discomfort zone, or the distress zone. And I'm going to define those here in a second. So the comfort zone is not to put like too strong a definition on it, because this is something where it's very feelings based. It's very individual to you. But these are some of the feeling words that you might be feeling when you're in your comfort zone: relaxed, secure, confident, tranquil, at ease. This is when you're in your comfort zone, you feel like you have a pretty good handle on what's going on around you. Compare that with, say, the discomfort zone. Some feeling words that might go along with discomfort might be uneasy, challenging, experimenting, vulnerable, uncertain, stretching. And these can also be contrasted with what we might call the distress zone. This is where maybe some alarms are going off that something is really unsafe or not right. And that could feel like overwhelmed, it could feel like panicked, threatened, paralyzed, flooded with emotions, frantic, disorienting, even risk of burning out, are all feelings that can come up in the distress zone. Now, before we hop into this activity, I want to just iterate a couple of things about these zones. One is these aren't good or bad. Being in the comfort zone isn't inherently good. Being in the discomfort zone isn't inherently bad. It just is. And one thing about the comfort zone that's not great is that when you're in your comfort zone, you're not necessarily learning or growing or building new skills. Things are pretty routine. The discomfort zone might not feel so great, but it's also, when we're in the discomfort zone, we are learning, we are developing skills, we're reflecting, we're encountering new ideas. Another thing that I want to really emphasize before we hop into this is that as you find where you're feeling and which zone you're in, try to resist comparing yourself to others, because not everybody is going to have the same comfort zone or the same reaction. And that can be based on so many things, from our individual experiences to our professional experiences. The important thing with this exercise is really to be able to recognize within yourself, how are you feeling and how can you respond based on what that feeling is telling you. And like, for instance, something that puts me in the distress zone when I'm working with a client is when I have to make a child line report. Even if I've done it so many times before, it's still something that every time I do it, I get kind of flooded with emotions, and I feel like um, I really need in those moments to access help and support, and even if there's not an immediate like safety need in the moment, it just has me feeling like really highly concerned. And just being able to recognize that feeling and get support around it, even though some of my peers who do this work, when they make a child line report, it doesn't put them in the distress zone. Maybe it puts them in the discomfort zone. Um, so I just say that to say your answer is not going to be the same as everybody else's answer. And finally, the thing that I want to drive home here too is that discomfort and distress can feel very similar, even if in actuality they're quite different. So sometimes when we are out of our comfort zone, it can feel like we've gone immediately into things are unsafe. I'm not safe, or somebody around me is not safe. When really, what we might be feeling is discomfort, but we're kind of mixing wires and thinking that actually it's a distressing scenario. So let's hop into it and kind of see what sort of reflections come up from this. So like before, I'm gonna invite y'all to scan this QR code or go to menti.com and drop this code. I will also drop the code into this chat if you lost it before. Take a moment to arrive at the Mentimeter. All right. Can y'all see my Mentimeter screen okay? Awesome, thank you. All right, let's try out first scenario. A client shares that they argued with their partner, there was no physical violence, and they want to discuss communication strategies with you. So just take a moment, think about how this might make you feel. There's no right or wrong answer. You might find yourself being on the border between two zones, and that's okay. You can put yourself on the border. And again, the goal is to just identify the feeling that's coming up within you and what that feeling is telling you. Great. So I'm seeing decent number of people in the comfort zone, also a decent number in the discomfort zone, and maybe a few people who are straddling the line. That's great. All right, so now we're going to move through a few more scenarios, and I'm going to ask you to keep doing the same thing. Just checking how you're feeling zone-wise and dropping in there. Here's another one. You suspect child neglect due to control at home, but it's ambiguous and may not meet the threshold for mandated reporting. So just take a couple seconds, think about where this puts you. Seeing a lot of people in the discomfort range, maybe a few folks on the border of discomfort and comfort, or discomfort and distress. Few folks in the distress range, absolutely. Great. We'll continue because we have a few more of these, but this is just a tool for your self-reflection. A client urgently asks you for help escaping today, and you're unsure how to proceed safely. Yep, noticing a lot more people in the distress range in this scenario. I think I might feel pretty flooded if I was in that scenario. Great. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Y'all are doing great. A client shares past abuse, but they're staying for financial reasons and they don't want help. Great. I'm seeing a whole range of answers here. A lot of people in the discomfort range. All right, we'll keep moving. Children are playing happily during your visit, and the caregiver is engaged and attentive. All right, looks like most people this time are somewhere around the comfort zone. Keep it moving. An abusive partner arrives during the visit and verbally threatens the client in front of you. Great. Great self-reflection. Seeing a lot of people in the distress zone and maybe a few folks on the edge, some folks all the way in the distress zone. I know that's a pretty distressing scenario, potentially. All right, let's keep going. A caregiver asks for info on local parenting classes or healthy relationship workshops. So, client is asking for some resources around parenting and healthy relationships. Great. All right, we're going to keep it moving. You see signs of controlling behavior, but the client denies any concerns or danger. You maybe pick up some signs of controlling behavior, but client denies any concerns or danger. Yeah, seeing a lot of responses kind of straddling the comfort and discomfort zone, for sure. Moving it along. You're personally threatened by somebody during a home visit. Yeah. Seeing a range of responses here, but a lot in the distress zone. This is something I really want to take a moment and just hopefully clarify that one, you do not deserve to be threatened, and if you ever are, I hope that you will take every precaution to be as safe as possible, including potentially leaving the scenario at least for a time. And this is not a really common dynamic in intimate partner violence. Um, I just say that to say if you are, I don't want to put a new fear in your head of this happening if it wasn't there before. But this is not a really common dynamic, in part because when people act abusively in relationships, they do it to people that they can get away with acting that way towards. So they might be physically abusive to their spouse, but not to their boss at work, for the very reason that they wouldn't be able to get it. They could get away with one, but not the other. And so often the time, the person who's really in the most danger is the survivor, not necessarily you. But if this ever happens to you, please, please, please prioritize your safety. All right, we'll go on to another one. The client looks fearful when their partner enters, but quickly insists that everything is fine. So yeah, just take a moment, sense how that feels to you, where it puts you on the comfort zone. Noticing a lot of people are in the discomfort range for this one. All right, keep it moving. The client says that weapons are kept unsecured and the abuser has made threats involving them. Yep, noticing trending a lot more into the distress, maybe distress/discomfort zone. We'll keep it moving. A client has old bruises. They say that they fell, and you don't see any immediate signs of danger. Noticing a real wide range of responses to this one. This is good. All right, I think just a couple more. A child says that they've seen or experienced violence and has visible injuries. This is a really good one that just shows the range of personal experiences out there. For a lot of people, this is, considered a distressing scenario. Some people, because of their professional experiences or even personal experiences, might have more familiarity with intervening in and responding to child abuse and or neglect, and this might feel a little bit more routine to them. No one feeling is right or wrong. Again, the goal here is really just to know yourself and know the feelings that are coming up. A client won't let you speak with them privately, and their partner stays present for all your conversations. A couple more seconds. Think about what this brings up for you, the feelings, where that kind of puts you. Great. Keep it moving. A client asks for a DV counseling referral, but doesn't appear to be in any immediate danger. Great. Really great. Seeing a lot of people in the comfort range, some in the discomfort range. Good. Okay, you arrive for your home visit and you hear yelling and violence inside. Great. Okay, this is going to be our last one. For the sake of time, but thank you for thinking through this. We are going to talk a little bit next about, can you all see my slides again?
Yep.
Cool. We're going to talk about communication strategies, especially when you get outside of that comfort range and you're in that discomfort state, which can be kind of immobilizing or paralyzing. I want to really drive home that if you are in the distress range, to really make yourself aware of what the policies are at your organization that are meant to protect you, and to know exactly what to do in those. I mean, not what exactly what to do, but to know that you're prepared and you have support, and that when you're in a distress zone. That really the most important thing is to make sure that you yourself and everybody else is as safe as possible. But when you're in that discomfort zone and you're working with somebody and there are things that you're hearing that don't sound right or that really kind of put a difficult feeling in your heart, these are some ways that you can maybe continue to keep the conversation channel open and hopefully still kind of opening up more possibilities and allowing for more agency and self-determination in the survivor. So, for example, When somebody discloses to you, first of all, that means that you've done something really, really well. Because there's a lot of stigma out there against people who have survived violence. And if somebody has opened up to you and shared that with you, that really indicates that they trust you and that you've built the kind of environment where they feel like they can share that. And um, just by responding in that moment in a way that is affirming, that is listening, that is empathetic, that is believing, actually goes so far in helping that survivor um, uh, uh, avoid some of the worst complex PTSD symptoms that come from surviving violence. Because some of the trauma that comes from violence isn't just experiencing the violence itself, but how you're treated by other people when they learn about the violence. And depending on how you respond to a disclosure, you can really set a tone for believing and supporting survivors. Now, the communication tool that I'd really love for y'all to have today when you leave this place is the ability to ask insightful questions. And what do I mean by insightful questions? I'm talking about questions that are open-ended. So they don't have a just yes or no answer. They could have a whole range of answers that aren't presupposed by the question itself. Think who, what, where, when, and how. Um, I didn't include why in that list. We'll get to that in a second, but the reason for that is because for whatever reason, asking questions with a why tends to get responses that can be kind of defensive, like you feel like you have to explain yourself to this person. Um, uh, what's great though is that a lot of why questions can be asked very easily or can be reworded using what or how. Insightful questions are also reflective, so they're not just trying to get at the time and the date and who was there and where was it. Um, they're not necessarily fact-finding questions. They're more questions that access the deeper values, the stories, the beliefs, identities of the person that you're working with that draw out what are the things that are most important to them. And then, of course, insightful questions are empathic. They really explore deep feelings, but you can really set a tone with how you ask these questions by how you listen to their answers. And by listening deeply and non-judgmentally and without an agenda is a great way to continue to progress the conversation. So to give you some examples, a narrow question might look like this. Do you feel safe in your relationship? That's a yes or no question, yes, no, and it demands a pretty clear answer of one or the other. You might ask that question in a more insightful way. What does your relationship with your partner feel like? That's totally open-ended. And it could include things having to do with safety, but it could also include some other things that you didn't even think to inquire about. Here's another example of a narrow question. Why didn't you leave sooner? Can you kind of hear in there how the why piece is, might set somebody up to feel like they're being judged? But you can just as easily phrase this question as a how question. How did you know it was the right time to leave? Do you want to stay in the relationship? That's another yes or no question. It presumes very clear-cut answers when life might actually be kind of messy, and the survivor might not be ready to make that decision, or they might feel conflicted about the decision itself. You might ask instead, what are you hoping for next? What is your goal for this relationship? And another example, why didn't you call the police? Again, a why question, it might result in somebody feeling like they're being judged for what they chose. You might ask it in a more strengths-based way by saying, can you tell me about some of the choices that you made to keep yourself safe? Not why did you not do this, but what did you do and what helped? So we're just going to take a moment to maybe practice this ourselves. What I'm going to do is throw up a hypothetical. It's not a real scenario, but it could easily be real, of a survivor who's conflicted about some things. And I'll read it to you. And my question will be for you to drop in the chat some questions that you might ask that are insightful, open-ended, empathetic questions that might help Tasha, who is the hypothetical survivor, to kind of think through what are their values and what do they want for their relationship. So here's the scenario. Tasha is a 27-year-old woman who recently started a new job that she's excited about. She's been with her partner, Trevor, for about 3 years. Lately, she's been feeling torn about how things are going in their relationship. Tasha tells a trusted coworker that Trevor has been acting more intense since she started her new job, texting constantly during the day and getting upset if she doesn't respond right away, and sometimes showing up unannounced at her workplace. She mentions that he's been a little controlling about how she spends her free time, and that she's canceled a few plans with friends because it just wasn't worth the argument. This weekend, she was invited to a friend's birthday trip out of town, something she was really looking forward to, but Trevor isn't happy about it. He says things like, I just don't see why you need to go without me, and I guess you're choosing them over me again. Tasha says he's never hurt me or anything, he just gets anxious. And I know he loves me, and I don't want to make things worse. But I also feel like I haven't had time to breathe. I don't know, I feel kind of stuck. So I'm going to invite you for the next 2 to 3 minutes to drop a question or 2 questions in the chat box. Think of an insightful question, something that gets to the feelings, the values that Tasha has, her belief, her identity, her strengths, something that you would like to ask her that might also help her to think through this decision that she's making about her relationship. All right, here's a really good one. Can you tell me more about the feeling of being stuck? Yeah. What do you feel is making Trevor act the way he is acting? Great. How does that make you feel? Excellent. That's an excellent open-ended question. How has Trevor's behavior impacted your ability to complete your job? Are you feeling emotionally fulfilled with this decrease in socializing? Great. What would time to yourself look like? That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great goal planning type question. What do you want? How does an ideal relationship look to you? That's excellent. Yeah. What are you hoping for next, and how can I support you? Yes. Excellent. Let's see if we can get 3 more. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Yeah. That's an example of like what is great about it is that it gets to like the feeling layer, and especially like concerning feelings like overwhelm. It is still phrased in a yes or no type answer. So another way that you might be able to express that is like, when you get overwhelmed, how do you know? What does it look like? I hear you're feeling torn. This is from Rebecca. I hear you're feeling torn. When you think about a healthy relationship, what would you want to feel or experience? Awesome. Yeah. This is a great way of identifying what are the values that the survivor holds. What kind of changes would you like to see in Trevor's behavior? Excellent. You know, even if Trevor does or doesn't act on those changes, it's really helpful to get clear about what Tasha is wanting. 3 years together, how have you handled previous conflicts? Excellent. Yeah, drawing on what has worked well in the past. Great. So y'all did a great job coming up with some insightful questions. Now I want to talk about another form of power. I mentioned two before, but I held off on this one because it's a little bit trickier to define than some of the other ones. Power within. Power within is your individual sense of worth, your self-determination, your ability to affect your life and make decisions. This includes your ability to make commitments, to change your mind, to inspire yourself or be hopeful about the future, to reflect on your life and make changes, to heal and be resilient. It's the kind of power that we'd love to see survivors access over the course of their healing journey, that power within them that has maybe been diminished by living with somebody who's been abusive toward them. But also survivors aren't the only ones who have this power. Each of us, even in our professional work, brings an element of our own individual power to this. And so I want to, before we take a quick break, give you an opportunity to go in Menti one more time. Again, with this code, with this QR code, or by going to menti.com and putting in the numbers, or I'll put the link in the chat again for your convenience. We're going to go back to Menti, and I'm going to ask you, what is one word for how you want to show up for survivors in this work? So go ahead and take a moment. Think about just one word, doesn't have to be your only answer, but just one that represents how you want to show up in this work when you're interacting with survivors. We'll take maybe 20 more seconds here for you to get your answer in. Some of the top ones I'm seeing here are compassionate, supportive, present, empowering, amigo, listening ear, believing. Yeah, great. Really good. I'm gonna be sharing all of these slides with y'all after this, including this word cloud that y'all came up with together. Hopefully it'll be something that you can refer back to and use it as a source of inspiration or a reminder of the power that you have within yourself. We're going to take a very quick break in a moment here. But before we do, I just want to put a couple of resources up on the screen for you to think about what is some of the most common referrals for survivors in the city of Philadelphia. Please know that one, you're going to get copies of these slides after this, so don't feel like you have to write everything down. You'll also get a resource list that is more comprehensive than this. So also bear that in mind. If there's just one or two things that I would highlight from this list, it would be the 24-hour Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline. It is free, it is confidential, it runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It is the number one best way to get into a domestic violence shelter, as well as access a whole variety of referrals and resources that could be useful. And I really want to offer to you that this hotline number isn't just for survivors who have immediate needs. It is also for you, professionals, if you want to hear about some resources or you have a question about navigating some systems in the city, if you even just had a really difficult case or experience with a client and you kind of want to debrief and get some feedback, you can call the hotline for that. It's a resource for you as well. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Please attend to your body, see what you need, get more coffee if that's your jam, and we'll come back together at 1:40. All right, welcome back, one and all. Hope you had a moment where you could take good care of yourself. We're gonna get away from slides for the last little bit of time together. If you, like me, are exhausted of hearing my voice, you'll be very glad to know that we're joined by some folks who are experienced in doing this work, who many, not all, have done some home visiting level of care, and all of them have gone through the intensive 25-hour training that Stephanie mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. And they've been integrating that into the work that they do. And so they're here to share a bit more about what that has looked like and what kind of wisdom they're taking away from it. So I'm going to ask a question to all of our panelists to start, which is just what is your name and the agency that you work for, and how long have you been doing this work?
I go first. I don't know if we're going in any order, but if not, hi everyone. I'm Anika Mukhtar. I work for a program called Parent Child Plus. I sit at PHMC, and I work with families primarily in North Philadelphia. I have been doing this work in this capacity for about almost 9 years now.
I'll go
I guess I'll
next.
go.
Oh, Mac.
No, go ahead, Christina. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mac. My name is Christina Rivera. I am with Maternity Care Coalition. I am one of the program directors, so I'm the director of specialized home visiting. I have been kind of just in social work field for maybe about 8 years now, with Maternity Care Coalition for 3 years now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mac. I am here at the National Nurse-Led Care Consortium. I have been doing this work at this location and a different agency for about 8 years.
Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Cora. I am the supervisor at Maternity Care Coalition for our program, Mama Build Healthy Babies. And I've been doing home visiting probably for about 9 to 10 years, but at MCC for 7 years now.
Hi, I'm Bria Roan. I'm also at Maternity Care Coalition working at the Healthy Babies. I've been doing home visiting for about 6 years, and I've been at maternity care for about 2 years and 6 months now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adrienne Edwards. I am a therapist at Maternity Care Coalition in our Momobile Family Therapist program, Family Therapy program, and I've been doing this work for 7 years.
Great. Thank you all for being here and for sharing some of your expertise. A question that I have for everybody real quick is when you need to decompress, like, what is your go-to activity?
So I've been thinking about this question because it changes, right? So lately, this is such a guilty thing that I do to decompress, but it's true. I get some kind of food that I probably shouldn't have, and I park my car so that my kids or my family doesn't have to see me, and I eat it in my car, all of it, and I wipe my mouth and try to get rid of the evidence before I go in the house, and it works.
So something that I do, I love dating reality shows, like my little guilty pleasure. So I'm intentional about just sitting on the couch, getting a good snack or some food, and catching up on the episodes that I've missed. And I also recently have been in the gym. And so I'm finding that is also like self-care. It makes me feel good. It helps me to release tension. And so those are probably the two top things that I do.
Anika, I can't believe you just put our secret out there because I do the same thing. I thought I was the only one, but it feels good to know I have support. So I eat whatever I want, but then I'm also super active. So I play soccer, I run a lot, I do yoga. So it kind of balances out.
I'll go now. I'm also a fan of the sweet treat to decompress, but I don't have any kids yet, so I don't have to hide it. So I can freely go for a sweet treat when I want. Something that I like to do to decompress is I like to kind of start my day in like a very calm way. So I like to call it like couch time. So I make sure that I am up early enough that I can just have time to sit on the couch, read my book, drink my tea, and not feel like I'm being rushed. So that kind of took over, because I work from home a lot, that kind of took over the commute aspect of my day.
I will say myself, I'll do either walking or I will spend time on TikTok.
Yeah, I'll agree. I love finding things out on TikTok or walking also without no distractions, like no music, no nothing, just walking, enjoying the scenery.
That's great. I love to hear all the different strategies that there are and how different they can be, but accomplish the same task. I'm wondering, for those of you who more recently have been doing um, work where you're visiting your clients in homes, particularly when you know that you're going into a house where there is intimate partner violence going on, or maybe you suspect it. Just how do you prepare yourself to enter that environment? Is there anything that you do to kind of center yourself, or even frame the experience so that you feel more confident heading into it?
I'll go first. I think if I know I'm going to a situation where there's some suspected intimate partner violence, I think first to go in to know that I don't have to be an agent to go in and save anyone. That my job is to show up with an open mind and to let them know that I'm there as a support. Whatever they want to share with me, they could feel free to, and whatever they need me to be there to support them in the way that is reasonable that I can, that I'm there to do that, but that I'm a partner for them and I'm following their lead on what they need.
I'll share. In addition to what Anika does, I try to be very intentional about being aware without appearing anxious. And so I am observing my surroundings. When I'm entering in the home, I am trying to position myself, like once I'm in the home, with the door in mind, with the door, or being aware of the door, not necessarily having my back to the door, trying to face the door, but just really being aware of what's going on and who is around so that I am not caught off guard by anything.
And I want to piggyback off of that, Adrian. Now, it's been a little bit since I've done kind of like one-on-one home visiting, but when I think back to when I have, or when there's been challenging situations, like kind of in the similar way that I said that I like to start my day off right, like I like to start a visit off right. So just like mentally preparing myself, whether it's like before I leave to go to the visit, like really sitting down, okay, what is it? Like, what are the musts that I need to accomplish for the visit? Where am I going? What is the neighborhood like? Does my supervisor, does at least one other person know where I'm going to be? And again, it's not specific to intimate partner violence, but I think it's specific to any situation, so that you're not coming in and you're not feeling flustered or rushed, or you're not feeling grounded in the moment, because that can be very difficult if you're feeling those feelings and then a difficult conversation is coming to play. It's almost like you're coming in with already maybe heightened emotions or heightened anxiety. So just taking time to really prepare before going into a visit.
Now, I have a question that lot of people asked in this training ahead of time, which is if you are working with a family and you suspect that there's some intimate partner violence going on, um, and especially if they haven't disclosed or mentioned anything yet, how do you start that conversation in a way that feels respectful and sensitive?
I love that question. I think for our program specifically, we're always trying to talk about the importance of like healthy relationships and keeping the folks who are a part of your life, like um, keeping those folks in your life if they're like aligned with your goals, aligned with your priorities, helping you out. So we like to talk about like positive coping mechanisms and healthy relationships, and we kind of slide it in there. How do you feel in your relationships? Is a question that I get often. We do speak a lot about trauma because often trauma is disclosed to us. So we tell them like, individual trauma can often manifest in our relationships as adults. How are your experiences within your relationship? And that kind of like leads us into the conversation. So I think if you sort of frame it as everyone needs healthy relationships in their life to be like a healthy individual, you can that kind of opens the door.
And I would like to just kind of to go along with Cora said, I found that it's really important to be able to provide resources for the entire family. So many times, originally, when you think about intimate partner violence, your goal is to support the person who's experiencing the violence, right? But like you said, a lot of times people don't want to leave. They don't want to separate. They want to, if there's children involved, they want to keep their families together. So it's very important to be able to provide resources for the family, programs for everyone, things that they can participate in together, because healing can happen, and working on those problems, those traumas can happen in many ways. So I think it's providing resources that support the entire family.
I would agree with that. Even here at Maternity Care Coalition, like just our name kind of aligns itself with working with a certain population, but really emphasizing with my advocates and my teams that we can work with a whole family, we can work with whoever the caregiver is, we can work with both partners in a relationship or both caregivers. And a little bit to what Cora was saying of just having that openness from the get-go, from the beginning, at least from your side. It may take a little bit for the client to have that openness. Um, but I think it's important, at least when I talk to my team, of, we're not waiting until something happens to have the conversation. Make it a part of like normalizing like what we do. It's just we do these check-ins. We have that open conversation. We try to be intuitive when we're working with our clients. We're asking them what would they like to see, what changes do they want to see in their life, so that, in those moments where something might feel heightened or something might feel different, or a client might feel like they want to tell us something, that it doesn't feel so maybe I can't think of the word that I'm trying to, like, it doesn't feel as high stakes maybe, that they're making this big confession to us, because they've already kind of like established a little bit of what's going on in their lives.
Um, Anika mentioned already that some survivors don't want to leave their relationship. And there are so many reasons why that might be the case. And I'm just curious for y'all, in your capacities, have you interacted with a survivor who did not want to leave? And how did you support them to be as safe as possible?
I have, yes. And I also want to acknowledge that that can feel very tough. Like
Hmm.
that's felt, maybe I've had feelings of concern or worry or maybe even impatience because, our heart as um, home visitors and individuals working in this doing this work is we want safety, but understanding that they're the expert. My client is the expert, and so one of the things that I do is provide information. I try to provide resources, even if they're not ready, because that sometimes, like, I've had clients who aren't ready to even use the resources, but I still see it as my role is to offer the information and to educate them about where they can go or who they can call when they're ready. Even if it's at 2 a.m. in the morning, you never know when they, feel ready. So that's one of the things I do, is just to provide resources and continue to remain non-judgmental, so that our therapeutic relationship remains safe, so that they can continue to share and open up, and process whatever it is that they're experiencing.
I would just add that it's important to trust the relationship you have with the client. And there's a reason why they disclose, and also to remind them that it's their decision to make, right? I tell people all the time, it's okay to make a bad decision. And sometimes there's consequences to that, but it's their life. They have to make that determination for themselves. And it's not my job to judge, it's my job to walk alongside them and meet them where they're at. And just because today they're not ready to leave, but you may be that safety net that helps them rethink things, that make a different decision later on. I can tell you, doing this work for so long, that client today says, no, I'm not leaving. And a month later, I gotta go. Or they'll call me, they left, they went to the shelter and they called and said, hey. So sometimes when you do this work, it's easy to kind of get frustrated, because like you just know that some of the stories we hear is not going to be a good ending, and you want to try to prevent that. But sometimes people have to get to that end point to take their life back. So only thing we can do is empower them, encourage them, and be supportive.
Yes, absolutely. And I just wanted to add that when folks are making that decision, like, it's okay to let them know, like, in the moment, I understand why you came to that decision. Because I feel like folks often feel judged if they decide to stay, or, feel like they have to give you an explanation, like, no, it's your life, I understand. But then I also had to realize that leaving is not always like the end all be all. For a lot of folks are co-parenting with abusers. This might be like 18 years that they have to work through communication issues and co-parenting and just other things like that. So just knowing that, leaving is not always the end all be all that it seems. And that it's kind of natural to want to want the best for your clients, or think safety might be leaving in that moment. So also not showing your frustrations if you have any, and just showing them, I understand why you came to that decision. But yeah, I've realized that a lot of folks are co-parenting through with survivors. So this is like a long-term thing that we're dealing with.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Cora. We're nearing the end of our time, so a question that I want to make sure to ask all of you is, if you could send a message back in time to yourself when you were getting started in this work, what would you want to say to yourself?
Learn about making safety plans. Learn about making safety plans and share them with the families that you work with. Learn the information now and share the information. That's it.
After you, because I would say, along with safety planning, is just having a deeper understanding of what safety planning means for individuals, and understanding that it's so individualized. And again, we've already talked about this in this space, like some people's safety plan may not be related to them leaving their partner. It may be, how do I safety plan, for being in my own home? and things like that. And it just can look so very different for everybody.
I will piggyback off of what everybody else said, and I would say safety planning for yourself as the home visitor first, um, before you safety plan with the client. I just think in doing this work, I think that's one of the biggest things that as advocates, we overlook the need to have our own safety plan going into these type of situations.
One thing that I would want to tell myself is remind myself is that some plant seeds and others water, and you never know what part of the journey you're on. And um, if maybe you're at the part of a journey with a client who is not yet ready to leave or not yet ready to make decisions that you think would be in their best interest, just understanding that like your presence and the connection you're making with them, the conversations you're having are all a part of their process and that they are on a journey in order to help mitigate not meeting clients where they are, because that's the important piece is to meet them where they are. Um,
All right. Well, thank you to all of our panelists for your time and your wisdom. Thanks to all of you for attending. Um, just one final housekeeping thing is that let me share my screen with you. We would love your feedback. If there's anything that worked well, but especially if there's anything that didn't work well today, what questions you still have. All of that is useful for us to learn. So please take an opportunity to scan the QR code with your device, or Stephanie also left a link in the chat that you can use. Give us your feedback because that would be very helpful. And Stephanie, do you have anything that you needed to add at the end?
No, this is perfect. Thank you all. You'll be hearing from us, I think, with the survey and with the resources that we mentioned and with these slides. So just thank you all so much for being here.
Yes, and thank you for your commitment to this work.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you all.